Welcome to the Editor's Podcast for the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I am Dr. Linda Snetzelaar, Editor-in-Chief of the journal. And this particular podcast is focusing on an upcoming supplement in the journal that's based on the topic of food security measurement. And I want to alert everyone to the fact that this particular supplement will appear online around September 18th for our October issue. So today with me, I have Dr. Park Wild, who is a professor at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy, Tufts University, and Dr. Irma Arteaga, who is an associate professor of public policy in the Harry S. Truman School of Government and Public Affairs, University of Missouri. Welcome to both of you. To enhance this upcoming supplement on food security measurements, I want to welcome your thoughts on some questions related to this particular topic. And the first question is, as we look at food security, why is the issue of measurement so important?
Thank you. That's a terrific question. And of course, there's a number of reasons. One is for any society, how well we feed our people, including those of us who have least, is a key measure by which any society can be judged. And in the case of the United States, food security measurement is important for understanding national progress towards goals that we've adopted over the years, such as cutting the rate of household food insecurity by half over time. And it's also important for evaluation of major federal nutrition assistance programs, including the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and the WIC program for women, infants, and children, in which our society has made big investments over time. Finally, these questions are related to a number of the most important topics in nutrition, such as understanding economic and food security predecessors towards poor diets and high rates of chronic disease. And so I think food security is important as a subfield within the field of nutrition, but it's one with particularly broad interconnections with other things that we care about in nutrition science and policy.
Thank you. Irma, how does this particular measure tell us how many households are actually food insecure?
Thank you for the question, Linda. I would like to start by saying that the USDA defines actually food security as access at all times, but all people within a household to enough food for an active, healthy life. But the operational measure does not specifically address whether the household members' food intake was sufficient for active, healthy life, which is the conceptual definition of food security. Instead, what it uses is a survey. And this survey has 18 items. So there are 10 items that correspond to adults and 8 items that correspond to children. So example of these items are worried that the food would run out, food bowls didn't last, or could not afford balanced meals, for example. So what is done is that there is we use a raw score, and the raw score is the number of affirmative responses to a binary survey items. And then with this raw score, we actually get the official food security status classification. And this is based on these scores. And we have these different thresholds of the classification. So we can say whether households are high food secure, marginally food secure, low food secure, or very low food secure.
Additionally, how does this measure tell us about the depth or the severity of hardship that households face?
As Irma explained, the most common way in kind of traditional household food security measurement in the United States of understanding the depth of food security is based on how many of the items are affirmed. So the idea is if people in a household have more experiences of hardship, such as if they have worry and they're concerned that the food didn't last, and they're having trouble getting balanced meals, and they're having cut or skipped meals, that the higher number of of items affirmed is related to how deep the concern is for the level of hardship and food insecurity in the household. One of the interesting things about this supplement in JAND and the project as a whole has been the diversity of methods that people have brought to bear. And this includes the traditional approaches, which is really useful for having authoritative measures of how many people are hungry and food insecure in the United States, but it also includes more novel efforts to make use of some of the aspects of the measure on federal surveys that have been underexploited, such as emphasizing how frequently do these hardships occur. For example, on how many days of the month did people cut or skip meals? And so that gives a second way of understanding the depth of hardship, is by how often particular types of hard times arrive in the household.
Yes. And so then moving this a little further, what's been missing in terms of methodology in the past, or what new approaches are being explored?
One of the hard choices for policymakers about how we measure a particular social issue, such as household food security, is whether to emphasize very consistent methods that can be applied in every population and every year, or whether to indulge in lots of variation from study to study. And you can see that the advantage of the consistent methods is that it gives us authoritative estimates of how many people are food insecure, how many people live in households that are food insecure. But some of the advantages of allowing more diversity in methods is to tailor the questions we ask to particular settings, such as what are the right questions to ask people if they're experiencing hardship during a disaster? Or what are the particular questions that are most suitable for particular subpopulations, for Indigenous people in the United States, for immigrant families in the United States? And to some extent, there's some value also in allowing that type of variation. And so some of the new approaches being explored are tailoring household food security questions to particular settings, but we recognize with a little bit of humbleness that that tailoring does to some extent come at the expense of the authoritative time series that measures national progress from one year to the next.
So then, Irma, back to you. How did your project engage new researchers in this field?
Thank you for the question, Linda. Park and I wrote an introductory piece for the food security supplement in which we review the history of the food security measure, talk about the instrument used to measure food security, its frequency, survey modes, analytical tools for the overall measure and subpopulation, and how this measure is used to monitor progress in reducing food security in the US, and how it's used to evaluate the effectiveness of federal food and nutrition programs, as Park mentioned. Finally, we discussed questions that we believe should be studied moving forward. For example, how much should the definition of food security be broadened to address additional dimensions? So these are the type of things that we discuss, and we are very excited about that. I would also like to mention that manuscripts in this supplement also discuss how modifying the food security survey model could address diverse issues overlooking in a single canonical measure. Specifically, this special issue presents work by Guyen, French, and Sinclair on how new survey questions may illustrate distinct aspects of food security for Indigenous people, including American Indians and Alaska Natives, or also unique circumstances of crisis settings such as pandemic or natural disasters. And this is work by Clay and Koirati. It also discusses how other modifications may address nuances in interpretation of Spanish language translations. So this is work by McLean, Johnson, and Dickin. Or intra-household differences in symptoms of hardship. And this is work by Aranda and Rivar. Or how the child and adult model could be abbreviated. And this is work by Poblacion. And possible future work is on how to take into account broader contextual circumstances such as racism and structural violence. And this is work by Singleton.
Again, thank you. And finally, as we look at clinical practice, how might a practicing RDN in a clinical setting use this particular supplement on this particular topic to enhance work with patients?
Thank you, Linda, for the question. I think this is an excellent question. And I can think about just when I go to a doctor office and I have really questionnaires to fill out. For example, during COVID, there were questions about depression and anxiety that people had to fill out due that isolation could have consequences with a person's mental health. I think that similarly, when someone goes to an RDN office, I think that the RDN can observe that a person maybe might experience loss of weight or have different signs of food security. And because of that, I think that they could use one of these proposed modifications that we have in this special supplement. So I think that what it is interesting and exciting about this issue is that, for example, the National Authoritative Measure of Food Security has one questionnaire, and it refers actually to household food security. But in this special issue, we have one of the projects that refers about how we can measure individual food security. So I think that that is something innovative. So also something that people can wonder about is, oh, do I have to use this long 18 items measure? And there is work that actually relates about how to abbreviate these measures. And I think that when we have situations like natural disasters or pandemic, there is also another measure in which we can take that into account. So because of all of that, I believe that this special issue is really important and very practical in the sense that some of these instruments can be easily adapted and be used for practical reasons.
Thank you so much. I think that these detailed ideas for a clinical setting will be very helpful to RDNs. And finally, I know that those listening to this podcast have gained new insights into this particular area of food insecurity investigation. And I thank both of you, Park and Irma, for responding to my questions on this important topic of measurement of food security. And I so appreciate your time in participating in this podcast. Thank you again.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Linda, for the important questions you're exploring, and it's a pleasure to talk to you.